All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, basketball fans, ball agents, I am Beast Mikey. You've now arrived with my train of thought. It's time to talk about the Power Rankings. We're another week closer to the NBA playoffs, and it's time to talk about who looks like is going to be where. But beware, there's going to be some things you're going to notice very quickly in the next few seconds as we get to the all too familiar Fulton, Kentucky Zombie Tier. We're going to start with Sacramento. Streak is over. There is some good news. After the hilarious song, and I'm going to share a link to it that Kings fans came up with to a Drake cover, they had lost 16 straight. It was not looking good, but now they've won 2 of 3. Good on you, Sacramento. Yes, you're terrible. Yes, you'll probably be very high amongst the ping pong ball allotment for the NBA draft before Adam Silver curbs the tanking, but it's good to see that the Kings aren't going to lose out and challenge the Pistons for all-time futility in an NBA season. Get on you, Sacramento. Washington, so many blowouts. Yeah, there's been a lot of beatdowns that the Washington Wizards have taken over the last few weeks, and it's ugly. It's some ugly basketball. I thought it'd be kind of interesting because Trae Young, Anthony Davis, very good with pick and rolls. Young with setting it up, Davis throwing it down, sure. But that's not what happened here. Instead, neither are going to play this year, and I'm sure they'll play next year with a very high draft pick in Alex Sarr, and we'll see where we go from here. But yeah, you got absolutely throttled by the Hawks, and got absolutely throttled by the Hawks again, even worse. He scored 96 points both games, though. Very consistent. Good on you, Washington, on that, I guess. Brooklyn, back to normal. Yeah, just when we thought the Nets were starting to look all right, look a little bit better, they looked like themselves, and they posed no threat at all to the Spurs last night. Not that they were supposed to. And they got beat by the Mavericks at home, which I don't recommend. Brooklyn has looked terrible, as we've noticed over the last, year plus, and not much has changed. They need a superstar in the worst way possible. And I guess the real question is, when will they be able to get one? Can they get one? We shall see. Indiana, 2 Wizards losses. Now, this may help them when it comes to draft lottery odds and ping pong balls, but the fact that you lost to the Wizards twice in a week is not something I truly recommend here. The Pacers, sure, this season was lost. We knew that. We knew when Halliburton blew out his knee, or tore his Achilles, I should say, we knew their season was cooked. Like, we knew it was done, and they're basically throwing up 26 and preparing for 27. We understood this. We all did. And honestly, I don't think Indiana's going to be here once Halliburton's ready to go for the 26-27 year, and their very high draft pick, and they're going to have Zubac for a full year with Siakam and all the other shooters that they got on that team. Indiana's not going to be here for long. This is only a temporary setback for the Pacers. I still believe that. Utah, poor Kevin Love. Yeah, Kevin Love is somehow on this team. He's still a player on this squad, and he's floundering away the end of his career, kind of chilling out as his Jazz team's playing a bunch of kids and people that we need name tags to identify. We thought, we're going to get Triple J and Markkanen and Kessler, and we're really not getting any of those guys. Triple J got shut down last week, as I mentioned, and now the Jazz are just basically playing out the string and praying for a 1-4 shot at the draft lottery. Although this draft, to be fair to everybody here, is actually really good. There's a lot of real talent here. Utah could definitely use a guard. That would help their situation. New Orleans, stay healthy, Zion. And that's the real positive part about this season, and honestly, the only positive part about this season for the Pelicans. After that really, really foolish trade, they're going to give the Hawks a pretty high pick. And the other thing about this, Zion Williamson has looked very good. He's been very healthy this year. I'm knocking on wood because I don't want to see Zion get hurt anymore. This is looked like a very dominant, talented player like we've expected him to be. Great work. Stay healthy. And I hope the diet is working. Diets have worked for some people. For me, I guess I'm eating a little bit better and looking a little bit better, but there are videos for that later. And Chicago, no win February. Yeah, the Bulls actually went without a win the entire month. It is quite wild. Maybe this is the sacrifice that was necessary for the Chicago Bears to thrive as well as they did. For that matter, the Cubs to be good, or for the White Sox to not be completely trash, or whatever it may be. Or maybe it was a sacrifice for CM Punk to remain World Heavyweight Champion in main event WrestleMania. That could also be a thing. Although tomorrow night, that may not happen in the same building that you're playing your games in. But we're not talking about that right now. What we're talking about is how the Chicago Bulls has suddenly cratered from your mediocre team to suddenly your pretty awful team. And you're going to finally have a relatively high draft pick for the first time since Derrick Rose. The fact that they lost Cooper Flagg on a coin last year, that's kind of wild. That's got to be really, really painful for Bulls fans. Let's go to Birmingham, Alabama for the Monkey's Paw tier. Dallas lost to Kings. I get it. Cooper Flagg didn't play. Understood. You don't lose that game if you have Cooper Flagg. I get it. But losing to Sacramento, I would never recommend it. And I won't recommend it for the next team on this list either because they also lost to the Kings. When it comes to Dallas, yes, Flagg is great. We've established that. But yeesh, nothing else really is. And you're going to do well in this draft in drafting a guy that can play with Flagg, right? Now, I know you're going to get Kyrie back next year, in theory, after the torn ACL. Understood. But can you fill out the rest of the roster properly? I like the bigs, but can you fill out the rest of the roster in terms of the guards around Flagg and Kyrie and those bigs that they have? That's going to be the question for the offseason, I would think. There's not much else to say about this team on the court. Memphis, ugly week. Okay, losing to the Kings is bad, understood, got it. But they didn't just lose to the Kings, the Grizzlies did. They got 2 losses to the Warriors in there since I've really focused on these power rankings. Both of them relatively close, even though Steph Curry, well, one of them was relatively close. One was a beatdown. That was the previous one, Wednesday night. They also got beat by the Heat, which was also kind of a beatdown. And other than the Jazz win, it was just not great. There's no shame in losing to Denver, especially with Jokic playing the way that he is. This was a rough week, and any shot that they could have had in catching Golden State or any of the teams that are in the play-in portion of the NBA playoffs in the West probably went away with this last week or so. It's been rough for Memphis to really get their footing after the trades they made. Atlanta, solid new guys. Jonathan Kuminga, maybe he just needed a chance. And Kuminga's looked good in these couple of games that he's played in since he's returned. Now, sure, they're against the Wizards. And yeah, the Wizards have scored 98 and 96 points respectively, so that's relatively easy to maintain them and destroy them. Okay, got it. They also beat the Nets. Nets were terrible. Understood. Got it. But they've won 4 or 5, and that's something to work with here. A Hawks team that's probably going to make the playoffs because, let's face it, the East, after the first 6 teams, is not very good. But at least you're in the playoffs at this moment in time and probably will stay there unless Milwaukee remains hot. More on the Bucks later. Same with the Hornets. I'm going to talk about them in later too. Portland, I have questions. So let me get this right. The Blazers gave up 157 points to the Nuggets in a game this past week, last Friday. Okay, that's pretty awful. Cool, I don't recommend that. You got absolutely obliterated by Denver. Understood. But then you only give up 77 to the Suns? Make this make sense, Blazers. How do you pull that off in the span of 3 days where you give up 157 one game and 77 the next? I can't, you give up less than half to Phoenix? I can't explain this. How? I need answers, Portland. I really do. Never mind a close loss to Minnesota, cool. Never mind a win against Chicago, because everybody does that. But, how do you pull that off? I need some real answers. Demi Avdija not playing, sure. That probably would have helped you beat Minnesota. Understood. And maybe it would have helped blow out Chicago as opposed to only beating them by 9. I got it. But those two back-to-back games with Phoenix and Denver may be the most puzzling series of events in the NBA we're going to see all year without injuries or other issues. Milwaukee, play impossible. I got to give the Bucks credit. They are getting off the mat, and they are moving very close to the play-in. They got a real shot. They've won 8 of 10, and they've looked like a pretty solid team without Giannis. They've held it together. Can Giannis get back in time? And if he does, how much of a difference can he make? That's going to be the big question I have for the Bucks. I like what I'm seeing out of what Milwaukee's doing. even though it's looked murky, Ryan Rollins has looked very, very impressive so far, thus far in this stint in this season. I'm liking what I'm seeing from him especially. Can Milwaukee keep it going? LA Clippers, very close week. Since last Wednesday, so we'll go back 9 days, they have had all single-digit games, all two-possession games, whether they won or lost them. The pendulum has been quite interesting for the Clippers, except for that does not include Houston last Tuesday, and even that was a 7-point loss. So we're talking, they run it back with Houston, and they get their leg back, beat them by 3. They actually beat Denver. Very impressive performance by beating the Nuggets. Cool. They should have beat the Lakers, and only didn't because Kawhi Leonard got hurt, which is rather unfortunate because he was playing really well in that game, and the Lakers found a way to steal it. And then we get the Magic game, they lose by 2, and you get Minnesota last night where they lose by 6. The Clippers have had some really close games, and you reverse any of those losses, and they're probably firmly into the play-in situation, as opposed to kind of sort of holding off Memphis. Not sure Memphis is going to catch them, but they're at least would it be further entrenched in it. A healthy Kawhi Leonard, and maybe the Clippers can get out of the play-in. I don't see them doing anything against the behemoths of the Western Conference, but I do think they can get out of the play-in at least that far, and maybe only that far. And Golden State, Western Conference Bucks, recent champion, losing their best all-time top 15 to 20-ish player ever. And Steph's probably closer to the top 10 than Giannis is at this moment, but you get the idea. The point of it is they're holding it together and holding it together decently. Podziemski has done very well. And in the case of the Warriors, we'll see how well Porzingis can figure into this as he continues to get his feet wet and acclimated as they move on from the Kuminga trade. Again, like Milwaukee and like the Clippers, I don't see them getting out of the play-ins. And even if they do, their ceiling is getting stomped by the Spurs or the Thunder or Houston even, or Denver even. The point of it is, for Golden State, at least they're going to go down swinging. And that is something that should be somewhat commended, I will say. We're going to go to Wilmington, Delaware for the playoff tier. Miami, warm, not hot. The Heat are starting to play a little bit better, and I will give them their credit for that, even though they've lost 2 straight. They're mediocre, and okay, I guess we can live with that. These losses to the Bucks and the Sixers are probably going to hurt a little bit because they were both winnable games, but ultimately Miami should be okay, at least for getting into the play-in stuff. They're currently the second best in Florida, but it's not by much, and I think Miami, as long as they are able to stay on this form, they're at least going to have the Florida showdown with Orlando, Groundhog Day. That's kind of what the Magic have gone through over the last week or so. They basically played the same game 4 times. They had a buzzer beater go against them, against the Suns. They lose by 3. They have close games in both LA buildings and literally allow the same amount of points while scoring exactly 1 more in the Laker game, 2 more in the Clipper game. And then last night against the Rockets, a very game performance against Houston, but they lose by 5. They abruptly and really honestly played the same game 4 times in the last week. And okay, cool, they're 2-2 in these games, beating the LA teams, obviously. Can Orlando keep this together? And is Orlando in play to really catch the 6-seeded Sixers and get out of the play-in tournament? Actually, that answer is yes. They're not that far off. Can the Magic pull it together and make that happen? That means more from Banchero and Wagner and company to do such a thing. Charlotte, under 500. How? How are the Hornets this mediocre despite the win streaks they've been on? Despite them having a really hot run into the All-Star break, despite them being 7-3 in their last 10, despite Knupel having the rookie record in threes already, and we still got a month to go. How are the Hornets still under 500? Like they played really well in a lot of their games lately. They've destroyed the Bulls, which you're supposed to do that, and the Pacers as well, because again, you're supposed to do that. They played well against teams like the Pistons and the Cavaliers. They beat the Spurs earlier this winter. Then I believe are the last team to do so. Like they've really played some good ball here. Yes, they are the last team to beat the Spurs, but the fact that they're still under 500 is absolutely stunning. Maybe it's because of the bad start they had, but even then, I would have thought they would have tracked it all the way down. Somehow they haven't. I think they probably will, because their three-point shooting has been ridiculous this year with Knuppel and Miller and Ball and company. Like, they've played really well and they've shot it really well. Charlotte looks like a team that should make the playoffs, and if they get in, they could be sneaky good while there. Phoenix, ugly home losses. I already talked about what happened with Portland and the unexplainable fact that the Blazers gave up half the points they did against the Nuggets against the Suns, which was really, really stunning. The other ugly home loss that probably should be mentioned here is that without Jaylen Brown, the Suns still got blown out by the Celtics. That's not great. I don't recommend that at all. Still, I think Phoenix will be okay. I think Phoenix will make the playoffs and maybe even properly make them, sure. But some of these losses are just weird for Phoenix. Sure, you got blown out by San Antonio, but you're supposed to do that. You got blown up by the Thunder, who are shorthanded, yes, but are still the Thunder. It's just kind of odd watching Phoenix, where they play really well and then they throw up some clunkers. Which are you, Suns? We need to know. Philadelphia, Edgecombe and Maxey. These two guards have played really well this year. In the case of Maxey, he broke Allen Iverson's record for most threes with the Sixers. In the case of Edgecombe, he will certainly be first-team All-NBA rookie and has earned it. He's played tremendous ball. And these two have really taken great pressure and strides away from Embiid. And whenever Embiid's been kind of in and out of the lineup, it's kind of been wonky. He did play last night, and the Sixers were able to get the job done. Okay, cool, fine. It's just it's messy for the Sixers to be able to do this with a hobbled Embiid at best, I guess, and a Paul George who won't be around for another few weeks. Still, the guards are getting it done, and they deserve credit. And when Embiid plays, he plays relatively well, like he did last night. He balled out against the Heat, 26 and 11. Very good stuff there. It just needs people to help the two guards out, because if you can, the Sixers will be just fine. Title contender, no, but at least just fine. Toronto, sharpened by iron. The Raptors had two really good games against two of the heavyweights in the NBA this week. On Wednesday, they played the Spurs in what was a really good game, and a game that, honestly, Toronto probably should have won. They ended up blowing it because they had a disastrous fourth quarter and got clamped up the entire time. San Antonio was able to steal the game at the end despite bad free throw shooting by the Spurs, and especially De'Aaron Fox. While Toronto, earlier in the week before this, played the Thunder, and it was a relatively close game, but OKC kept them at bay. Good work by the Thunder to do so. So that's two of the main heavyweights in the NBA, obviously. They scored 107 points in both games. At least they're consistent. Unfortunately, allowing 116 and 110 in those two games is not recommended. Though it happened. No shame, Toronto. You lost to two of the best in the game. You at least have the Wizards. You're going to beat the Wizards, right? Right? LA Lakers, a sluggish week. The Lakers' week has not been great. It's looking a little sloppy with Luka. Something's not clicking here. Maybe they'll be able to build around him later on. But when it comes to the Lakers over this last week, it's been that loss to Orlando I talked about, a game where the referees were not nice to them against Boston. The Clippers game where they stole without Kawhi Leonard, sure, fine. And then obviously what happened last night against the Suns, where they ended up losing the game at the very end with a wide open three, and they could not match it, even though Austin Reeves had a very good look. The Lakers are still at the 6th seed in the Western Conference. Okay, cool, fine. They can hang there. Okay, great. You don't get the play in. You don't have to use LeBron's legs for such a thing. But the 6th seed means Houston, and you don't have the depth for that. At least one would imagine that you wouldn't have the depth for that. Truth, there's no good scenario in the Western Conference first round, considering those four teams are all great, but you're only a game ahead of Phoenix for the play-in tournament. That was a huge win for the Suns last night. Can you keep that game ahead of the Suns? And Minnesota. Edwards helping Randall. I mentioned last week that Julius Randle was absolutely carrying Minnesota at different points. And now we're getting the cause being helped by Anthony Edwards, who had a 40-burger earlier this week as well. Minnesota escaped Portland last night with a dub, and the Timberwolves are looking relatively solid. They too are in that kind of limbo of, okay, we're avoiding the play-in at least, and I have a decent chance to leap Denver and end up getting home court advantage in round one at the very least, which should be fine. Okay, cool. We can tolerate that if you're Minnesota. With Randall and with the way that Edwards has played and Gobert, who played pretty good in the last game, good. You can deal with that as long as you're able to get home court and steal it away from the Nuggets. Because Denver at home, I don't recommend it. Even though, to Minnesota's credit, this core does have a win in a Game 7 in Denver. So I guess if anyone's going to be unafraid of Mile High and what that city can do to you, I guess the Timberwolves would be one of those teams. Let's go to Moynihan in the New York City title tier. And it's kind of fitting that the Knicks are going to be 8th here because Moynihan being across the street from Penn Station, which is downstairs from Madison Square Garden. It's a real nice setup they got up there in New York. Anyway, let's talk about the Knicks and ask one question. You trust Cat? I don't know. I have my doubts. I'm very concerned about what the Knicks are because Jalen Brunson, you can trust him. And the rest of that team, do you have enough offense around him? Karl-Anthony Towns against Cleveland was real spotty. The good news is he went 100% from the field. Can't argue with that, except for the whole point of him only shooting 4 times. That's a little concerning. I don't love that. I truly don't love that. Need Cat to do more in the paint. Need Cat to do more when it's go time and it's showtime against the heavyweight teams. They'll be facing one of these teams in this tier on Sunday. They've already faced one of these teams in this tier this week, and it did not look good. The team that the Knicks faced and got really destroyed by this week was Cleveland. Showdown in Detroit. Yep, it's go time for the Cavs as they have played tremendously well with or without Harden since Harden. They have balled out and have looked very impressive. Now, I don't know if I can trust these boys in the playoffs. I don't know if we're there yet. But for the regular season and for those purposes, I can truly trust what this team is capable of. They've done really good work. They get the Pistons tonight in what will be a really good litmus test, I would say, for Cleveland as Detroit's gauntlet week continues. My goodness, Pistons, who did you anger to get this run on the schedule? Harden and Mitchell have played well off the ball with each other, and with Mobley and with Allen, as long as Mobley's healthy, as long as Allen's healthy, because they both had some injury stints, the Cavaliers are going to be a really challenging out in the East. Boston, West Coast success. Okay, beating the Lakers is always good for Boston, whether you're a terrible team, and they're rarely that, or a really good team, which they actually are now. They are somehow second in the Eastern Conference. It is wild. But that wasn't the only place where they won this past week. They went to Golden State, handled it. They went to Phoenix, handled it without Jaylen Brown. They also went to Denver, and that didn't go well. But again, going to Denver is not for the weak. And they did this off a back-to-back where they beat Phoenix. That's not recommended. That's probably not great. But in any event, 3 out of 4 ain't bad on the West Coast. And they come back east to play Brooklyn, which should make this 4 out of 5 in this latest run of the Celtics. And I think both teams would be okay with that if that were the case. Denver, discount if daring. Another home week for Jokic, as he absolutely destroys people and destroys worlds. That's just what he does. He had an off night this week against Boston, which, okay, fine. An off night for a lot of teams and a lot of people, it's not great. It's bad shooting, and you get maybe a dozen points and a couple boards. Okay, cool. But for Jokic, an off night for him is 30 points, and he's 12 boards, and it's 6 assists, and it's 11 of 28 from shooting. That's gross. That's some people's best nights, and it's an off night usually for Jokic because of the field goal percentage. It is actually gross. And they blew out Boston anyway, even with Jokic's so-called off night. Denver is nasty, they're legitimate, and sometimes it's shocking to see them lose. It really is, because the Nuggets are just that dominant. Somehow they fell down to the 4 seed, though, and that's a bit of a shock to me. They got a monster game coming up tonight against Oklahoma City. I'm here for the heavyweight battle between these two teams and 2 of the, I would say, 5 best teams in the game. It's obviously evident by my power rankings because Denver's 5th. Who's 4th, though? Houston. 32 KD. Congratulations, Kevin Durant, on eclipsing 32,000 points in your NBA career, your Hall of Fame first ballot NBA career. No burner phones were necessary in recording Kevin Durant get all these buckets and all these points. The Rockets have looked good. The Rockets have looked very efficient. The point guard play is not like the rest of the team. But anyway, Houston has played pretty well. And they've held it together through the lean part of the schedule, but beating up on Sacramento and Utah. You're supposed to do that. And Orlando, who they're just better than. The Magic aren't a bad team. They're just better than them. And they're also better than Miami. But we'll see that if that plays out tomorrow night. That loss to the Knicks, though, that's a little concerning. I don't love that. But the way it happened, it was a major league choke job. Still, it's a very good week for the Rockets, and the Rockets are still a real contender when it comes to winning an NBA championship. They're still a real contender. They just have to get anything in terms of point guard play, and I think they got a real shot at winning the chip. Oklahoma City fought a second. It is very well on the board, and considering the injuries to SGA and Jalen Williams, it is almost expected, to be honest. I think it's going to probably happen in the next couple of weeks, where they fall out of the first seed and into the 2 seed, which, upon SGA and Jalen Williams coming back, if they are able to, that's going to be problematic. And it may also mean Denver, who I think a lot of us expect the Nuggets to catch and pass the Rockets to be the 3 seed. That's really the trick here. Do you avoid Denver? Whoever does, I think, has got a major league advantage when it comes to the Western Conference, if you're Oklahoma City or if you're San Antonio, for that matter. Avoiding the Nuggets, can you do it? And right now, the Thunder would be the team playing Denver in round 2, and the 2 Texas teams would be playing each other. But the Thunder, with Jalen Williams with a Y, did hold things together this past week, beating Cleveland. Very impressive performance. They won a couple nights ago as well. I just mentioned the showdown coming up with Denver. That's going to be appointment viewing, seeing what the Nuggets and the Thunder, who are shorthanded and still balling, are capable of. I'm very much looking forward to seeing this game tonight in Oklahoma City. They played Detroit. No shame in them losing to the Pistons. OKC-wise, but yeah, I do want to see what this team is like fully healthy when we get towards the playoffs. And maybe that's what they're doing here, is holding out SGA and Jalen Williams as close to the playoffs as humanly possible. Detroit, the gauntlet continues. They got beat by San Antonio, and as physical as they were against Wemby, they just couldn't withstand the shooting that San Antonio was bringing with Champagnie and especially Devin Vassell. And then they play Oklahoma City a couple nights later, and they looked a little bit better against a obviously shorthanded Thunder team, but they got the job done. And now they get Cleveland, who is the next part of this gauntlet, and this gauntlet doesn't end with this Cleveland game tonight. They've got more to deal with. Detroit does. Will they be caught for the 1 seed? Probably not, because they play too well to get leaped by Boston. But this gauntlet is continuous, and it will go into March. After, okay, sure, they got a Magic game. They're not bad, but they're just not amongst these heavyweights. Cleveland again, San Antonio again. It's not nice. This gauntlet is not nice, and somebody in Detroit angered somebody in the scheduling office in New York. San Antonio has proven themselves worthy as the number 1 team in the league. Strength in numbers. That is the theme of San Antonio, and we've seen this post a few times this week on the Twitters and in various other places, but it is 100% true. Where it is, if it's not Wemby, it's De'Aaron Fox. If it's not Fox, it's Stephen Castle. If it's not Castle, it's Devin Vassell. If it's not Vassell, it's Julian Champagnie. If it's not Champagnie, it's Dylan Harper. If it's not Dylan Harper, it's Keldon Johnson. If it's not Keldon Johnson, you get the idea. You see where I'm going with this. The point is, they've got a lot of guys who can do a lot of things and put the ball in the hoop. If it's not Keldon Johnson, it's Harrison Barnes. It's a lot of dudes who can put the ball in the hoop and do damage and do work. And you could say Wemby has an off night against Detroit, for example, because of how physical they played against him. However, it was almost a 20-20 piece. It was almost a Barbara Walters challenge. It was 21-17, and he had 6 blocks. And he deterred almost everything that was coming his way. He did get banged on once or twice by Jalen Duren, but he deterred almost everything coming his way in that game against the Pistons. And that's par for the course for him, where he could deter almost anything coming his way against anybody. That's just the way he does business. And that's the way the Spurs do business. It's not just Wemby. It's everyone. Wemby is the headliner, sure. Wemby is the one who's going to get a lot of the accolades. He'll win Defensive Player of the Year as long as he has enough games. He may even win MVP, too. It's cool. That's on the board. Mitch Johnson might win Coach of the Year. And honestly, he should. The way that San Antonio is moving, it's everybody moving all together, all at once, with a 7'5" alien leading the way. No, he probably won't be able to fit in the Shinkansen comfortably, as we'd have to have a special Shinkansen built for Wemby's size. Anyway, San Antonio is handling business, and they do have a test against the Knicks on Sunday in the Garden as the rodeo road trip continues. Can they keep this streak going? And can Wemby and the Spurs get their second win against the Knicks this season? So there you go. There you have it. That is the power rankings for this week in the NBA. Coming up next week, more power rankings. The NHL is back. We're going to get power rankings for hockey. And yes, there will be similar photos and Shinkansens for hockey as well. And there will be Miami Mock Mondays. That's coming up, well, Monday. I will do another mock draft. And obviously with the combine numbers and figures involved here, we're going to get some decisions that will be made by other teams. How high will Sonny Styles go after the 440 he ran yesterday? What about DDS? What about Zane Durant? There's a bunch of people that ran real fast 40s, and we're going to see the other position groups run them today, so that'll be very entertaining. And Miami Mock Mondays will be the first stop of my next train of thought.